The evergreen pavilion shimmered under crystal chandeliers, a beacon of wealth and influence. But for Victoria Langston, it was the stage where entitlement met its match, a place where the air was thick with the scent of orchids and ambition, and where she, a 35-year-old black CEO of Langston Enterprises, stepped into the gala in a tailored emerald gown that exuded elegance without the need for ostentation. No diamonds dangling from her ears or neck, no flashy accessories to announce her status, because her true power resided in the intricate $900 million merger she had meticulously architected with the Harrington Group over the past 2 years, a deal poised to reshape the landscape of tech and finance in ways that would echo through boardrooms across the nation. The Harringtons themselves, a billionaire white family whose name was synonymous with old money dominance in real estate and investments, had orchestrated this lavish event to flaunt their latest conquests, a celebration of their enduring empire that drew the elite from every corner of the industry, with Eleanor Harrington, the formidable matriarch, gliding through the crowd with her silver hair swept into a flawless chignon, her diamond earrings catching the light like distant stars in a night sky, radiating an aura of unassailable authority that she wielded like a scepter. Beside her strode her son, Theodore, tall and impeccably groomed in a custom tuxedo, his smirk as refined as the pavilion's marble floors, surrounded by a tight-knit circle of associates, men in crisp, tailored suits and women adorned in glittering gowns who orbited them like loyal satellites, hanging on Theodore's every quip and laughing in unison as if it were a rehearsed performance at a royal court, their voices blending into the symphony of clinking glasses and murmured deals. Victoria positioned herself near the grand piano, her phone held discreetly in one hand as she reviewed the final terms of the merger, her mind sharp and focused, drawing on a lifetime of experiences that had honed her into the leader she was today. Experiences rooted in the small, segregated town where her grandparents had painstakingly built a modest business from the ground up, facing barriers of exclusion and discrimination that tested their resolve at every turn, yet instilling in her a legacy of unyielding grit and strategic patience that she carried like an invisible armor. She was no stranger to these opulent spaces, having navigated their treacherous undercurrents time and again, but she understood their subtle dangers all too well, the way assumptions could linger in a glance, the way privilege could masquerade as politeness. Her grandparents' stories echoed in her thoughts, tales of overcoming redlining and systemic hurdles to pass down not just assets but a blueprint for resilience, which Victoria had expanded upon, transforming their humble beginnings into the powerhouse that was Langston Enterprises, a company that now rivaled the giants in tech investments and innovations. But as she reached for a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray, intending to quench a momentary thirst amid the evening's intensity, Theodore's voice sliced through the ambient hum like a poorly concealed blade. "Excuse me, miss," he called out, his tone laced with an effortless condescension that betrayed his upbringing. "We're out of champagne over here. Could you hurry with a refill?" His group erupted in chuckles, a sharp, resonant sound that reverberated off the pavilion's gilded walls, amplifying the moment's cruelty in the vast space. Victoria paused mid-reach, her fingers tightening ever so slightly around the glass, a subtle tension that only she could feel, as she turned slowly to meet Theodore's gaze with a composure that immediately began to unsettle the group's easy amusement, her eyes steady and unflinching, reflecting a depth of experience that they could not comprehend. Eleanor leaned in closer, her thin smile barely masking the underlying dismissal. "Don't dawdle, dear. This is an investors' event, not a place for loitering." Her words not merely offhand, but a deliberate command, steeped in the unspoken assumption that Victoria, a black woman dressed in a gown that prioritized grace over grandeur, could not possibly belong among the ranks of the elite, her presence an anomaly to be corrected rather than celebrated. She didn't flinch outwardly, her expression remaining a mask of serene control, but inwardly, her mind raced back to the foundational lessons from her family's history, the way her grandmother had navigated similar slights with quiet dignity, teaching her that true strength lay in measured responses rather than immediate reactions, lessons forged in the fires of adversity that had shaped Victoria's path from being overlooked in her first board meeting at 27, where she was assumed to be an intern despite leading the agenda, to closing monumental global deals at 32 while fielding questions about her qualifications that no one else in the room faced. This moment, though stinging, was familiar fuel, a spark that ignited her strategic mind rather than her emotions. With deliberate calm, she lifted her phone to her ear, dialing Marcus, her trusted executive assistant who had been with her through countless negotiations. "It's time," she said softly. Her voice low but resolute, her gaze never wavering from Theodore's increasingly puzzled expression. "Pull the $900 million to Vanguard Alliance, full redirect now." The group's amusement began to waver, the laughter trailing off like a deflating balloon, though they hadn't overheard her exact words, sensing only the shift in her demeanor, the way she held the phone like a lifeline to a world beyond their comprehension. Theodore, undeterred or perhaps oblivious, snapped his fingers impatiently, a gesture that spoke volumes about his sense of entitlement. "Hello? Service staff? We're waiting here," he pressed, his tone escalating as if volume could enforce compliance. One of his companions, a stocky man flashing a gold watch that screamed inherited wealth, chimed in with a smirk. "If you're new to this, you'd better learn fast. We reward speed around here." Eleanor, ever the enforcer of their social hierarchy, plucked Victoria's gala invitation from her wrist with manicured fingers, scanning it briefly with a dismissive smirk before tearing it in half, letting the fragments flutter to the floor like worthless confetti, a symbolic act of erasure that hung in the air. The string ensemble continued their melodic backdrop, oblivious to the unfolding drama, but the nearby guests started to take notice, their conversations dipping as eyes darted toward the scene. Victoria's voice remained unwavering into the phone. "Confirm the transfer, no delays at all," she instructed, her tone precise and unyielding. Eleanor, growing impatient, waved imperiously at a security officer stationed by the grand entrance, his badge reflecting the chandelier's glow. "Please escort this person out. She's causing a disturbance," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. The officer approached with measured steps, his expression neutral but cautious, the badge on his uniform gleaming under the pavilion's lights as he addressed Victoria. "Ma'am, I need to see your identification to resolve this." Victoria glanced down at the shredded invitation scattered on the floor, her response calm and pointed. "It seems that's been taken care of already." The officer paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as he sensed the underlying tension, the way the air had thickened with unspoken implications. Whispers began to spread among the guests like a gentle breeze rustling the pavilion's velvet curtains, curiosity turning to intrigue. A waiter balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres slowed his pace, his eyes widening in recognition he had seen Victoria's profile in recent industry publications, highlighting her innovative deals. But he continued on without a word, his silence a form of discretion in a room full of power plays. Theodore, sensing the moment slipping, laughed louder in an attempt to reclaim control. "Come on, sweetheart. Enough of this act. This is for serious players only." His words laced with a forced joviality that rang hollow. Victoria's composure remained her greatest asset, a shield forged from years of similar encounters, her grandmother's wisdom echoing in her mind. "They'll try to erase you, but your roots run deeper than their judgments." Words that had guided her through building Langston Enterprises on the foundation of her family's enduring legacy, transforming it into a force that commanded respect in boardrooms worldwide. Into the phone, she continued. "Priority override Vanguard gets everything, from contracts to patents, the entire lot." Her instructions clear and irrevocable. Eleanor's smirk began to fade as she overheard the word Vanguard, the Harringtons' primary rival in the market, her eyes narrowing in confusion. "What did you just say?" she demanded, but Victoria didn't deign to answer directly, allowing the weight of the moment to build. The air in the pavilion thickened further. The grandeur of the setting, the ornate ceilings, the polished floors, the floral arrangements suddenly feeling like an elaborate stage for the Harringtons' unwitting misstep, their assumptions exposed under the bright lights. An older investor dressed in a gray suit standing nearby murmured to his companion, "Langston, isn't she the one driving that massive merger we've all been talking about?" His voice low but audible, the companion nodding with widened eyes. "Yes. Exactly. Her company's the key player." The security officer finally reached Victoria but hesitated once more, his hand hovering near his radio as he looked back to Eleanor for further confirmation. "Ma'am?" he queried, caught in the crossfire of authority. Victoria met his gaze squarely, her voice even and measured. "Before you proceed with this, consider carefully if you're aligning yourself with the right side of the situation," her words carrying a quiet authority that made him freeze in place. Theodore, frustrated by the delay, stepped forward aggressively. "Do your job already," he barked, his laughter now replaced by irritation. The whispers among the guests grew louder, a subtle undercurrent of speculation rippling through the crowd, and the photographer in the corner snapped a discreet shot, capturing the tension for posterity. Victoria spoke once more into the phone, her tone final. "Execute the plan now, sealing the fate of the deal in that instant." The merger was unraveling thread by thread, and the Harringtons remained blissfully unaware that the woman they had so casually dismissed held the power to reshape their entire empire with a single call. The gala's shine, once so alluring, now dimmed in her eyes, exposing the raw, unflattering edges of their unfounded assumptions. Victoria stood unwavering, her emerald gown serving as a quiet beacon amid the fading merriment, her mind already mapping the path ahead, ready to ignite the full consequences of their ill-chosen words, a resolve born from a legacy that no amount of prejudice could diminish. As the evening's program continued with speeches from the stage, Victoria slipped away briefly to a quieter corner of the pavilion, her phone still in hand as Marcus updated her on the real-time progress of the redirect. "Funds are moving. Vanguard's team is thrilled. They're ready to announce the partnership," he said, his voice steady through the line. She nodded to herself, the weight of her decision settling like a well-placed cornerstone, knowing that this was not an act of impulse but a calculated step to protect the integrity of her work and her family's enduring principles. Back in the main hall, the Harringtons resumed their mingling, oblivious to the storm brewing, their laughter returning in forced bursts as they toasted to future deals. But Victoria knew the tide had turned irreversibly. She re-entered the fray with renewed focus, engaging in conversations with potential allies who approached her with curiosity sparked by the earlier exchange, their questions veiled but probing. "I couldn't help but overhear, are you involved in the Harrington merger?" one investor asked, and she smiled faintly. "Was," she replied cryptically, planting seeds of doubt that would blossom in the hours to come. The pavilion's atmosphere, once electric with celebration, now carried an undercurrent of uncertainty for those attuned to it, the string ensemble's melodies seeming almost mocking in their lightness. Victoria's thoughts turned to her grandparents again, imagining their pride in seeing her stand tall against the very barriers they had fought. Their small business, a seed that had grown into this towering enterprise through sheer determination. She excused herself from a cluster of guests, stepping onto the balcony for a breath of fresh air, the city lights twinkling below like a map of possibilities, her mind racing through the next phases, alerting key stakeholders, preparing statements for her board, ensuring Vanguard's integration was seamless. The night air cooled her skin, but her resolve burned hotter, a fire kindled by the Harringtons' misstep that would illuminate paths for others long after this evening faded. Returning inside, she observed Eleanor and Theodore from afar, their gestures animated, but their eyes darting nervously now as if sensing an invisible shift. Victoria's phone vibrated with confirmations from Marcus, Transfer complete, Harrington's legal is scrambling, and she allowed herself a small private smile, knowing this was just the beginning of a larger correction. The gala dragged on, but for Victoria, the real work had just begun. Her legacy not in revenge, but in redefining what belonging truly meant in rooms like this, one decisive action at a time. As the event wound down, guests began to depart, their whispers now laced with speculation about the scene they'd witnessed, and Victoria lingered, fielding a few more inquiries that hinted at new partnerships eager to align with her vision. The Harringtons, meanwhile, huddled in a corner, their phones lighting up with urgent messages from their team, the first cracks in their facade becoming evident. Victoria finally made her exit, her emerald gown swishing softly as she walked through the pavilion's grand doors, the night sky welcoming her like an old friend, her steps light but purposeful, carrying the weight of a legacy that no one could tear apart. In the days that followed, though the immediate confrontation had ended, Victoria's resolve only strengthened, her team at Langston Enterprises rallying around the pivot to Vanguard with enthusiasm, reports flooding in of improved projections and excited partners. She reflected often on that night, not with bitterness, but with a sense of affirmation, knowing her grandparents' teachings had prepared her for exactly such moments, turning potential defeat into undeniable triumph. The world of high finance moved fast, but Victoria moved faster. Her path cleared of obstacles like the Harringtons' prejudice, paving the way for a future where merit, not assumptions, dictated the rules. And so, the story of that gala became legend in industry circles, a cautionary tale of what happens when entitlement blinds one to true power, with Victoria Langston emerging as the quiet architect of change, her legacy growing with every deal she sealed thereafter. As the pavilion's lights softened for the evening's keynote address, the confrontation morphed into a network of unexpected support, with Victoria Langston standing firm near the scattered remnants of her torn invitation, her phone still a silent conduit to her team beyond the gilded walls, where Marcus was already mobilizing the full machinery of Langston Enterprises to execute the redirect of Vanguard Alliance, a move that would not only sever ties with the Harringtons, but also send shockwaves through the interconnected web of investors and partners who had been orbiting the merger like planets around a sun. Eleanor Harrington, her silver hair catching the dimming light in a way that now seemed more like a fading halo than a crown, pressed closer with a voice sharpened by the first hints of unease. "This nonsense stops now," she declared, gesturing imperiously to the security officer once more, her diamond earrings swaying like pendulums, marking the ticking seconds of her eroding control. But before the officer could close the distance, a clear, unwavering voice pierced the growing hum of the crowd, a young journalist named Sophia Grant, who had been assigned to cover the gala for a prominent digital outlet known for its incisive reporting on industry power dynamics, stepped forward from the periphery where she had been jotting notes on her tablet, her phone now held aloft with the red record light glowing steadily like a beacon of transparency in the opulent haze. "Wait a moment," Sophia said firmly, her tone carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed too many similar oversights in elite circles to stay silent. "I reviewed the guest list earlier today. Victoria Langston is listed as a principal partner in this merger." The crowd stirred subtly, heads turning with a mix of curiosity and surprise, the whispers evolving from idle speculation to pointed interest as Theodore scoffed dismissively, his custom tuxedo suddenly seeming ill-fitting in the shifting atmosphere. "You're mistaken. She doesn't belong here, and that's clear to anyone with eyes." Sophia, undeterred, raised her device higher, the camera lens capturing the scene with unflinching clarity. "I'm recording this. Would you like to repeat that statement for the record?" she challenged, her words hanging in the air like a gauntlet thrown, forcing the Harrington circle to tighten defensively, though visible cracks began to form in their unified front. The associates exchanging uneasy glances as the weight of potential exposure settled over them. It was at this juncture that another voice joined the fray. One from an unexpected quarter, a server named Jamal, a middle-aged man with a steady gaze honed from years of observing the elite from the shadows, set down his tray of hors d'oeuvres with deliberate care and nodded subtly toward Victoria, his uniform crisp but his demeanor unbowed. "She's legitimate. I saw her badge when she arrived, and I've read about her work in the trades. She's no outsider." Jamal's quiet endorsement sent immediate ripples through the room, his words carrying an authenticity that resonated because he wasn't part of the power play, just a witness to its hypocrisies. And Victoria acknowledged him with a brief, appreciative glance that spoke volumes, her voice remaining unwavering into the phone as she instructed Marcus, "Secure the Vanguard Alliance, immediately release the preliminary press statement to our contacts." Eleanor's face tightened further, her ears catching the mention of Vanguard. The Harringtons' most formidable competitor in the cutthroat world of tech finance hybrids, her eyes narrowing in a mix of confusion and dawning alarm. "That's our direct rival. What are you implying?" she demanded, but Theodore, quick to regain footing, pulled out his own phone and began dialing urgently, his fingers fumbling slightly in the haste. "Get legal on this right away, she's bluffing, trying to stir up trouble," he barked into the receiver, his voice rising just enough to draw more attention from the surrounding guests. Yet the murmurs in the pavilion grew louder, a subtle undercurrent of speculation turning into an audible buzz as Sophia's camera continued to roll, capturing not just the Harringtons' mounting unease, but also Victoria's unyielding calm, a contrast that amplified the drama unfolding before the assembled elite. More voices began to chime in from the edges of the crowd. An executive from a neutral investment firm who had been eavesdropping on the exchange checked his tablet with furrowed brows. "Langston Enterprises? Hold on, she's the driving force behind that massive tech merger everyone's been buzzing about," he said aloud, showing his screen to a cluster of nearby guests who leaned in, their nods of agreement adding fuel to the shifting narrative, the whispers evolving into open comments like, "This could be big," and "They've misjudged badly." Jamal, now bolder in the face of the growing support, added his voice again. "You all assumed without even asking, that's on you, not her." His tone firm but measured, drawing a few approving murmurs from other staff members who had paused in their duties to watch. Eleanor, her composure fraying at the edges, shot him a withering glare. "Stay out of this. You're here to serve, not opine." But Sophia swiftly interjected, her live feed already streaming to her outlet's platform, where comments were beginning to flood in from viewers tuning into the unexpected drama. "He's as much a part of this space as anyone else right now, and frankly, this is going live to thousands. Your words are being heard far beyond these walls." Sophia's announcement acted like a spark on dry tinder, the pavilion suddenly alive with the ping of notifications as guests pulled out their own phones to check social feeds, the initial clip from her stream gaining traction with rapid shares and reactions pouring in. "Expose the entitlement," and Victoria's handling this like a pro. Theodore's call finally connected, his voice escalating in frustration. "Stop whatever she's doing, block the accounts if needed," he urged his legal team. But on Victoria's end, Marcus delivered the confirmation with crisp efficiency. "Vanguard has signed off. Funds are fully redirected, and the media outlets have been notified with our statement on values alignment." Eleanor's clutch slipped in her hand, the faint clink of her diamonds against the leather echoing in the momentary hush. Her face a mask of controlled panic as she processed the implications. The alliances in the room shifted visibly and irreversibly. A group of younger investors who had been hovering on the periphery now gravitating toward Victoria with expressions of solidarity. One woman in a striking red dress stepping forward to say, "I've followed your innovations for years. This treatment is unacceptable, and I'm sharing this on my network." To which Victoria nodded graciously. Thank you. Truth has a way of spreading, her words simple but potent, planting seeds that would accelerate the viral momentum. Jamal, sensing the turning tide, handed Victoria a fresh glass of water with a nod of respect, a small but meaningful act of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by Sophia's rolling camera, capturing the human element amid the high-stakes drama. Sophia, now fully immersed in her live commentary, narrated for her growing audience. What started as a case of mistaken identity is now unveiling deeper issues in these exclusive circles, with bystanders stepping up in real time, her words fueling the online engagement as views climbed exponentially, comments lauding Victoria's poise with phrases like, "iconic response." And this is how you command respect. Eleanor's phone began to ring insistently, likely board members or advisors demanding immediate explanations for the sudden upheaval, the pavilion's once celebratory elegance now feeling like a hollow shell, a backdrop to the crumbling facades of those who had wielded their influence so carelessly. Jamal whispered to Sophia, who was adjusting her angle for a better shot, "She's rewriting the script right here," and Sophia smiled faintly. "And we're the ones documenting every line. This is going to change conversations." As the keynote speech commenced on the stage, the real narrative played out below in the shadows of the chandeliers, with Victoria's network activating in full force, texts flying to key influencers, emails dispatched to strategic partners outlining the pivot and the reasons behind it, all framed around a commitment to integrity and inclusion. The Harringtons, in their attempts to regain control, only isolated themselves further with defensive remarks that came across as desperate, their once loyal associates edging away discreetly, phones in hand, as they monitored the burgeoning online backlash. Sophia's footage continued to fuel the fire, the stream achieving viral status with shares from industry leaders and everyday viewers alike, hashtags emerging organically like number Victoria Langston and number Cal Out the Elite, transforming the evening from a private gala into a public forum for scrutiny. The tension escalated palpably, with the Harringtons' empire beginning to show its first visible fractures under the relentless pressure of their own misjudgment, all exposed by this unexpected coalition of witnesses, from journalists like Sophia capturing the truth to everyday allies like Jamal refusing to stay silent, who together amplified the moment into something far larger than a single confrontation. The pavilion, with its velvet drapes and floral displays, no longer felt like a sanctuary for the powerful, but an arena where assumptions were challenged and alliances redrawn. Victoria at the epicenter, her quiet authority drawing in supporters like a gravitational force, ensuring that the Harringtons' misstep would not fade into the night but echo through digital channels and boardrooms alike. As the keynote droned on about innovation and partnerships, the undercurrent of the room pulsed with this new energy, guests exchanging glances and pulling out devices to follow the live updates, the Harringtons' attempts to downplay the incident falling flat as more voices joined the chorus of support for Victoria, turning what could have been an isolated slight into a catalyst for broader dialogue on equity in elite spaces. Sophia's stream hit a milestone, her commentary evolving to include viewer questions flooding in. How can we support leaders like Victoria? She read aloud, replying, by sharing, by questioning, by standing up when it matters, her words resonating as the online community swelled, transforming passive observers into active participants in the unfolding narrative. Jamal, meanwhile, continued his duties but with a newfound purpose, slipping discreet notes to other staff about the incident, fostering a quiet network of solidarity among those often overlooked in such settings. The escalation reached a peak when a prominent investor, previously neutral, approached Victoria during a brief lull. "I've seen enough. I'm pulling my commitments from Harrington Ventures and exploring options with Langston," he confided, a defection that sent ripples through the crowd as word spread. Eleanor, overhearing fragments, turned pale. Her phone, now a constant source of alerts as partners began to distance themselves preemptively, the viral nature of the stream accelerating the fallout in real time. Theodore, his earlier smirk long gone, paced slightly, dialing more contacts in a bid to contain the damage, but each call only confirmed a spreading fire. Legal advisors urging damage control while PR teams scrambled to craft responses that wouldn't exacerbate the situation. Victoria, amid it all, remained the calm eye of the storm, fielding a few more alliances as the evening progressed, her phone vibrating with confirmations from Marcus. Vanguard's press release is out, media picking it up fast, solidifying the pivot as not just a reaction but a strategic masterstroke. The pavilion's atmosphere, once buoyant with toasts and networking, now carried a charged undercurrent. The keynote speaker's words on collaboration ringing ironic against the backdrop of fracturing ties, with Sophia's live feed serving as the conduit for global eyes, ensuring the Harringtons' misstep became a teachable moment broadcast far and wide. As the event neared its close, the tensions had escalated to a point where the Harringtons found themselves increasingly isolated, their circle shrinking as guests migrated toward Victoria's orbit. Drawn by her poise and the undeniable justice of her stand, the night transforming into a pivotal chapter in the ongoing story of challenging entrenched power structures.